morning, coronavirus sexes. This is your ticker guy on the 15th. Well, this would be tax day, but it's not because, of course, taxes are not so important when everyone's getting $1,200 of free money, right? Well, oh, yeah, that's going to work out real well. We're not producing anything, but we're going to give everyone $1,200. And then probably some more, and plus if you are unemployed, you're getting $600 a week to sit around with your finger in your butt, plus whatever your state money is. The state money, by the way, is not very generous, but that at least is somewhat of an insurance policy in that, you know, people, they yell about that all the time, the standard, not the extended garbage that went on during 08, 09, but the standard unemployment is actually an insurance policy that you forcibly buy into as an employee. Your employer actually cuts the check to the government, but it's not optional. They have to do it. And so you essentially, and by the way, the premium that they have to pay, which they're forbidden by law from putting on your check or taking out of your check, varies based upon how often they fire people. The reason I know this is I used to fire people a lot, and therefore, after you get to a certain point, it caps off, and then you really don't care. You can say you're fired all you want, doesn't cost you any more money. But if you have a low firing rate and you start firing people, everyone that you fire makes your unemployment rate go up. So just a little tidbit. Anyway, I used to like the Donald's two favorite words. And so, by the way, he doesn't use those anymore. You notice that since he became president? Yeah. Especially since this coronavirus thing started. Yeah, okay, all of a sudden Fauci is like, you know, the god from wherever. But he wasn't there yesterday out in the Rose Garden. Isn't that interesting? And then the other thing is, of course, he has control of the narrative there because he has control of the microphones. That's the other thing. So, you know, yeah. But, you know, the press, by the way, has, along with a couple of governors, have managed to switch the narrative. And I want you to pay very careful attention to this. It's really important. When this whole thing started with social distancing and the forced closures of bars and then the 50% reduction in restaurants, you had to keep 6 feet between parties and things like this, which, by the way, in Florida only lasted about a week. Okay, I got one whole week worth of being able to go out and enjoy a little bit of beer and some chicken wings and stuff like that. And then, of course, that door was slammed shut. Not that I really care. I'm perfectly capable of cooking my own food at home. On the other hand, the people who used to take care of me in those places and that I used to enjoy the company of, they're not liking it so much. Their businesses have been destroyed. The premise originally, if you remember, and what we were all sold, and the reason we all went along with this and said it was okay, besides the fact that the government was going to send us a $1,200 check, was that we were told that this would not stop you from getting the virus. It was very important. We were told it would not prevent transmission of the virus, but what it would do is prevent overload of the medical system. In other words, if we went along with this, if we said yes, and we did this, and we were little boys and girls, that we would have a low enough peak, not the total number of cases, that was not going to change, but we'd have a low enough peak that the medical system would be able to not just take care of the people who have coronavirus, but if your uncle had a heart attack, he wouldn't die for a lack of a hospital bed. All right, now that second argument is actually a pretty good one, assuming it's true, right? I mean, if you think about it, that's actually a fairly good argument. The other route that we could have taken, and we should have taken, would be to designate, and if we had to open field hospitals, if we don't have enough spare capacity where you won't impact the ability of Uncle Joe to be able to get treated for his heart attack, no, then open up a field hospital somewhere, and at the same time, rent out an entire hotel next door to it for the people who work there, and all COVID patients go there. Pardon my coffee. And nobody else. And anyone that works there gets locked in for the duration until they are proved that they've seroconverted and have antibodies. Then they can go back home if they want to. But until then, they're all locked in. And you do the same thing with nursing care. All the nursing homes. Oh, but everybody will quit. Well, you know what? There is an amount of money that you can pay them that they won't. And the reality of it is that if you did that, we wouldn't have had to shut down anything. We would have had a very high spike, okay? But then it would be over. And by now, we'd be on the downside of it permanently. Speaking of which, why do I go back through this again? Because somewhere in the middle of this last 2 or 3 weeks, the Screaming Karens moved the goalposts. And they did it with the explicit cooperation and now involvement of governors. especially the governor of Michigan. Gavin Newsom has made similar noises out in California. My guess is that he's not just California, he's also speaking for Oregon and Washington. And there was a question raised at the press conference yesterday with Trump about, well, when you drop some of these constraints, what happens if there's a second spike? Well, folks, you need to understand this, and this is the entire purpose of this podcast, okay? You're either going to get a second spike, in which case we didn't actually stop the transmission, did we? Because that's what we were sold, was that that was not going to happen. Well, it isn't, all right? You're either going to get that spike, and from it, we'll be able to calibrate whether or not we would have ever actually overloaded the healthcare system, or you're not going to get it. And you say, well, that's good, right? No, actually, if you don't get it, it proves that all of these mitigations were worthless, and that, in fact, the prevalence of the virus is high enough in the society as a whole that that what we're seeing right now in the case droppings is not a result of our mitigations. It's a result of herd immunity. One way or another, we're going to find out. But the idea that we're not going to get this spike, I think, is a little fanciful, because the constraints are real. Now, how much they've actually dropped transmission is almost impossible to estimate. You know, Fauci and everybody else, and Trump and his 15 days to slow the spread, and then 30, and Pence, and, you know, all the finger wagging, and then the cheering. Oh, you guys are doing so great. Well, you know what? I don't think we're doing anything. I don't think there's any evidence that a respiratory virus of this sort can actually be interrupted by anything anything less than welding bars across people's doors, which we haven't done and we're not going to do. So I don't think there's any evidence to support the claim that we've done such a great thing here. I don't think there's any evidence for it at all. Zero. Zip. You're not going to convince me otherwise. I think what we have instead is evidence that we actually did hit herd numbers. And all of the data that I'm seeing says that that is likely the case. But we'll see. Because now we're not really ready to do things now. And, Fauci is saying that May 1st is way too optimistic. Folks, we're on the verge of breaking supply chain things that are going to do really ugly things to America. And I know that pretty much everybody out there in the general public is loving this paid vacation, which is how they're treating it. Oh, I have to sit at home and watch Netflix? And I can sit around and drink beer all day. What a bummer. There are parts of the country, I happen to be in one right now, where people aren't taking it quite that seriously. Okay? Yeah, we know there's a virus. Yeah, the bars and the other places and they're closed. Okay? But not everybody is running around like a scared willy-nilly. In a lot of places they are. And I'm still every now and then in one place or another. And I see, boy, I'll tell you what, around my place in Northwest Florida, if you think that people are going to come back to the beach and are going to flood it and are going to flood all those rentals and all those condos there, boy, if you own one of those places, and right now, by governor's order, you cannot rent it to transients. You can't do beach, the week-long rentals. It's actually barred in DeSantis' EOs. I read through them. So that's cut off, whether people want to do it or not. So the only people that are in those units right now are people that actually own them. All right, and then Walton County, as I pointed out, went so far as to say you can't sit on your own beach, which is effing lunacy. And they actually got a judge to agree with that. There was a lawsuit filed by Mike Huckabee and some others, and actually lost, at least at that level. I don't know if they're going up on appeal. They damn well ought to. But this is the kind of crazy that goes on. On the other hand, there are some people that aren't quite so crazy, but it's very mixed. Okay, as I pointed out the other day, the guy across the street from me mowing his lawn with a face mask on. Now, you can say, well, some people do that anyway because they have allergies, and yeah, I know some people do it anyway. There's a couple of people in our neighborhood who have done it, pretty much continuously, all right, long before there was coronavirus. And I understand that. You got a pollen problem, whatever. You get a big snoot full of it, and you're going to be hacking for the next, just 6 hours, and it sucks. Well, guess what? This guy is not that kind of guy. This guy is, bare chest, no shirt on out there doing his lawn, and he doesn't give a wet crap about what anyone thinks about it. And now he's got a damn mask on. So don't tell me he's trying to avoid allergies. That ain't the truth. He's scared of the frickin' virus in his own yard. Anyway, the social changes that are going to come out of this in terms of consumer behavior, I think they're going to be profound. There'll be some people like myself who are going to say, bite me. If I want to shake your hand, I'm still going to shake your hand. I want to say hi, I'm still going to say hi. I'm not afraid of this thing. Okay. If it gets me, it gets me. And I understand that. But look, folks, I understand how viruses work. I understand the basic premise behind them. You're not going to prevent yourself from getting it. And secondly, the other thing that goes along with that is that if you think there's going to be a vaccine, there's some very interesting data coming out of I don't remember exactly what institute it is, but it's not in the United States. They have found signs of significant mutation, significant enough to frustrate a vaccine. All right, now, this does not shock me because we've never had a successful coronavirus vaccine in the past. But that we're actually now getting documentary evidence of it means that if this, in fact, proves up, it means that the attempts to find a vaccine are worthless. And that's what I've always said. You have to assume that that's going to be the case because it's never worked before. What we have to worry about now is all the screaming Karens that have managed to redefine the standard from make sure that Uncle Joe, if he has a heart attack, has somewhere to be treated. That's the whole point of these measures that we're taking, these mitigations, okay? It's what we were told and what we were sold. Now the answer is you can't get the virus. You have to stop people from getting the virus. That's the point of the measures. Well, folks, that means you never open the economy. That means these people never consent. They never say yes. And that's what you heard out of the governor of Michigan. That coming from a governor is, hey, listen, if you guys that live there, if you're listening to this podcast and you live in that state and you allow that misguided, stupid, crazy woman to stay in her office, you deserve what you get. All right? She has told you point blank that your state is never going to reopen for ordinary business. Never. Because this virus is not going away and there isn't going to be a vaccine. And if you cannot, listen, if you want to roll the dice on Michigan ever going back to anything being close to normal, on a vaccine being found that gives permanent immunity, you go right ahead. I'll tell you right now, it's a pipe dream. We should have done what I've talked about before, which is lock in the hospitals, have field hospitals for COVID patients. Nobody goes in there unless you are either positive for the virus or you're locked in if you're a healthcare worker, unless and until you have antibodies. Then you can leave because then it's safe. All right? It's a sanitarium model, basically. And that leaves the rest of the healthcare system alone for everybody else. And you know what? If we have to, in front of every doctor's office and every hospital, if we have to have one of those Abbott machines and you have to take a 10-minute rapid test before you can get out of your car, that's fine, okay? If that's the price that we have to have so that we know every time you come into that building that you're not going to infect everybody else in there, then that's what we're going to have to do. All right? But that would have been a whole hell of a lot cheaper than what we're doing right now. It wouldn't have ruined the economy, number one. It would have controlled infection in nursing homes and hospitals, which have been two of the largest vectors. And at the same time, it would have made all the mitigations unnecessary because probably about half of the cases and half of the deaths, at least half the deaths from what we're seeing with the nursing home situation, wouldn't have happened at all. So you want to talk about if it saves even one life. Well, this wouldn't have been one life. This would have been 10,000 lives or more. All right? We're talking about a huge number of people. Now, granted, most of them were going to die sometime in the next 6 months anyway. That's the reality on nursing homes. Okay? Your average life expectancy once you go into them is 6 months. I didn't realize it was that short, but it is. Nonetheless, we could have taken that path and we didn't. What you have to watch for today and going forward is the people that have moved the goalposts. It is no longer we're going to protect the healthcare system so it doesn't overload. Now it's we're going to stop the virus from being transmitted from person to person. That is not going to happen. And you need to stop thinking of it as being that way. If you haven't had it, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to get it. Okay? I wish it wasn't true, but it is true. I can't make it untrue by wishing it to not be. That's what we have to deal with. That's where we are. That's how it is. I'm your ticker guy.